Mission First Tactical is the official tactical accessories provider for the Talking Lead podcast and the Leadhead Brigade. Use the code LEADHEAD for an exclusive 20% discount on all orders.
Hey, Leadheads. Welcome back to another episode of the Talking Lead podcast. And it is Talking Lead. It isn't Talking Lead. So for you motivational speakers that are out there looking for a leadership podcast to be on, quit emailing me. It's lead. We do some of that here, but that's not the main aim of our show. We like to leducate the unleducated here at the Talking Lead podcast. 12 years. That we've been doing this, and we really appreciate all you long-term lead heads. We've got a great show for you today, and we're going to get into that. But before we do that, make sure you go to our previous episode where we had the gentleman from Disavowed Group. They are a silencer manufacturer, and they do 3D printed suppressor silencers. So that was a great episode. We got into the flow-through technology and talked about different materials that they use for the 3D printing and where suppressors are headed in the future. So go back, check that episode out. And then continuing our Mastering Survival series, this episode, we're going to get into communications, caches, and community. So joining me for this episode, we're bringing back a crowd favorite, ladies and gentlemen. It's Brian Seaver with the Tennessee Rangers.
Hey guys, how's it going, Marty?
And Saps. We did a whole episode of Saps. Yeah. So there's a thing going on right now this weekend with the Rangers. I don't know if we want to talk about that or not, but Brian
maybe talk about
it from time to time.
Yeah, for sure. We've got our in-dock happening this weekend. It's actually been going on all week. The new candidates have been going through conducting a charitable mission all week, and it will culminate with basically what might be described as a hell weekend. Full in-dock selection process. So we're doing that this weekend as a big push with new candidates.
Very cool. And I was going to be a part of that, but things came up, and hopefully I can catch the next one.
Yeah, for sure.
Are we allowed to say you pussied out or chickened out?
You can say that. If you want to. Yeah, I saw all the things you guys are going to be doing, and I had to come up with an excuse. So
yeah, big. The candidates do a long road march. I won't release the length of the mileage. They do a extremely long road march. They do a boat operation. They do a cliff rappel portion. It's 3.5 days, almost 4 days of no sleep. Basically, all they get to eat is rice that they cook themselves, white rice that they cook themselves, and they carry the pot around everywhere they go with them.
Oh my God.
It's a tough selection. So, and these are folks that have applied to join the Tennessee Rangers. Many of them are youth. We've got quite a few that are, in the 18 to 21 year old age group. So it's and a lot of wrestlers. We've got quite a few wrestlers that end up coming through our in-dock. So we've got to tune them up.
Wrestlers, or what kind of wrestlers are you talking about here?
So wrestlers, high school wrestlers. We sponsor, the Tennessee Rangers sponsor a lot of wrestling teams locally, and with that, we use it as a bit of a recruiting tool to get young men that involved that have good physicality, that have good work ethic, hard work ethic, and we position those young men to get a career path in the security industry. and for a lot of them, it starts with the beginning with the Tennessee Rangers in wrestling. So
yeah, and I like the fact that you guys have that charitable aspect of it that you've built in with it too. And
yeah, as part of their NDOC and selection into the squadron, each candidate has to conduct a charitable mission of their own design. And this week we had a large project that we had to do. We had to get done pretty quick, and it was a roof repair, a roof removal and replacement in one of our surrounding counties out here, and it took a lot of manpower to get it done, and it was good to have the candidates be able to conduct their charitable mission by virtue of that project.
yeah, and that was in Camden, Tennessee, because we got good friends there in Camden. Tactical Response.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. James Yeager, God bless his soul. He was at our, I guess, rendezvous 2 years ago.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Good guy.
Miss him. Yeah, really miss him. Yeah, he was a good guy. And then to Brian's, the rest of these guys are new guys. New guy to the Talking Lead podcast. To Brian's, I guess it'd be his left, my right. We have Ryan Fay, and Ryan has a pretty extensive background in communications. And Ryan, I'm going to let you talk about your background there a little bit.
Yeah, so basically I started out Special Forces Communication Sergeant at 7th Group. Did that some team time for about 3 years, and then got out 2015. And ever since then, that's when I really started learning about communications. Did a lot of satellite communications with the Navy, and from Harris radios to MQ5s to Starshield to BGAN to any system I've touched it. Some I know a lot better than others. Right now, I'm actually working with a 4-letter agency doing counter weapons of mass destructions, which is radiological nuclear search. So I support certain soft units in South America. Basically, my job is to get what sensors are on the ground back to any talk in the world. So whatever our PACE plan is, PACE plan being primary, alternate, contingency, emergency, I just got to get it most likely to Virginia or maybe Homestead. So that's
very
what I'm doing.
nice. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say, and I know our listeners will be too. Also, I made a post for our listeners that I do before most episodes, asking them for their comments, questions, feedback for this episode. So we'll be going to those, and we'll be reading some listener questions, and we've got some prizes that we're going to award our participants. So next, down below me, we've got Howard Jones, and Howard also has extensive experience with comms and communications. So Howard, give us a little bit of background about yourself.
So I've got a degree in electronics, and saw my first concert in the 6th grade, and so I was hooked into the music business, and ended up touring for nearly 20 years as an audio engineer, production manager, tour manager, and then started my own production company. We do audio, video, and lighting. So I've been in the entertainment industry about 41 years.
Wow.
And, yeah, I'm old. So
you said your first concert was at 6. Who was that?
Charlie Daniels, Linda Ronstadt, Wet Willie, Stokely Athletic Center, Knoxville, Tennessee.
Wow.
Yeah, I got sucked into being the chaperone to my middle sister and her boyfriend on a date. So, but who knew where it was going to lead, right? That's
hilarious. My first concert was the Commodores.
Oh wow.
I think I was probably about your age. My mom wanted to go to that. It was at Starweed. Remember Starwood?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Not Starweed, but yeah, good old Starwood.
Very cool. But yeah, so I started getting into a lot of combat shooting, tactical rifle training stuff, around 2000, and had always been an avid hunter and all that kind of stuff. But when 2020 rolled around and our industry was shut down for 14 months and there was all the things going on in the country, it seemed like a good time to maybe take a deep dive and do something interesting. So got together with some folks, and we started diving into radio, and that was an interesting journey, right? So especially on the HF side. Like I said in my bio, I'm kind of fascinated by the physics and science of it as an audio guy, because all those things, signal levels, transmission over distance, all that kind of stuff applies. But figuring out HF proved to be a challenge, and so we had to really go deep in that one, and but we figured it out, and it was really it's fairly simple now. Now it's like so simple it's kind of silly, but but getting there, when somebody says they know something and you're trying to work through that, and then you finally just go, hey, I can't do this anymore. I didn't do this for a hobby. I got into it for dedicated point-to-point communications with certain people, specific friends and stuff, and there's no way it could be this sketchy or nobody would do it. So we finally figured it out and moved forward from there.
Are you just in the music industry, or do you do film, TV also?
No, just music. Yeah,
just
some
music?
corporate, but mainly just music. Yeah.
Gotcha. Very cool. Yeah. So looking forward to your input on the episode here. And then last but not least, kind of the reason for this show that we put it together, this gentleman, and I don't know if you want me to say your name or not, so I'm just going to leave it up to you as to how much information you want to put out there, Chris. You got your name on the screen, so I will say Chris. So
yeah, you can use Chris. That's
okay.
Fine.
Perfect.
I'm not trying to be like super covert. I'm just have some things that I might be wanting to do, and I'm just trying to.
You got reasons.
Okay, so a little bit about me. I just recently retired. I did my last stint with 20th Group. December of 2024, I got out after almost 28 years. 20 plus years of that was spent in the Special Forces community, SF community. Spent time in 10th Group on an ODA, was at SWIC for 4 years in the selection process, then went to 5th Group, had a break in service, and then later went on and took part in 20th Group. So a little bit of the reason why we're, I think doing this show, I shared a document with Lefty on a document that the Tennessee Rangers put together, which it's called the Shit Hit the Fan Planning Guide.
I love it.
Basically, in that environment where you don't know what's taking place, it could be an EMP, civil unrest, whatever, what is your family or your internal community doing to plan for, certain things like survival, comms, and Ryan, specifically to that point, and Howard, I think we want to add one more thing on there, some type of security. There's devices out there that you can set up when you move into a temporary position that you could set something out at the dog leg to alarm you that somebody's coming in there. So some type of,
early detection.
Yeah, early detection, sensory device. That would be a nice add-on to this from a comms perspective. So my goal was really just to give a high-level overview on some of the things that we put together in the document and then cover those and talk about them. Probably the key to this, and I shared this, before we took it live, was there's been numerous studies since the 1800s, whether it be a gunfight, some type of interaction between, good and bad guys, who survives that. And the key to that is typically mobility. Whether you're at your home, you need to think from the perspective of, if you're going to your home and something happens, do you have somewhere you can go to close to your house to get items that you need, to then potentially move to another location? Same thing if you're at your house and all of a sudden your house comes under attack and you need to, move away from that location. Do you have somewhere close that you can get items? So we're going to cover, where you typically want to put cache items or caches, and we'll cover some of the best places to do that.
Cool.
Items that you would want to have in that cache, bullets, med items, a small go bag, some type of comms device that you can communicate with people that you would want to communicate with. And then obviously from that home location, you're going to have an endpoint that you want to go to. And that would be another good location to potentially have cache sites. And then obviously, if you're just out and about, and that there's areas that a great area to put a cache site, believe it or not, is power lines. Those humongous power lines that are state owned or federal owned. To go out on one of those late at night and put a cache site in at one of those, freaking super contraptions that they got set up, who's going to find that? So that's kind of the
power line workers.
Yeah, power lines, stuff like that. Even
great
potentially state parks, as long
Was
as
that
you have
Ryan?
What's that?
Power lines are great for land navigation too.
Yeah.
You can find on a map.
Yep. So if you want, I think there's probably 2 or 3 for this segment of it, bullet areas that we would want to focus on. One, obviously, you've got kind of 3 locations, obviously your home location where you're going to set up caches, what you would want to have in store at your house or, at the cache sites, and then your intermediate that you're going to move to maybe rally up with. Me and Brian have talked about that. Where would be a good rally point for the Rangers when something really went bad? One key point about that, and obviously, people that have former Rangers and people that have, had some tactical experience, anytime you're moving into an overnight location or, en route rally point, you typically want to have a dog leg, that's important where you would put some type of sentry device, something that would alert and stuff like that. And then obviously where you're going to have your final destination, just plan for, a good area that has water, some cache sites that you've set up. And then I don't know how deep you want to go into. Do you want to go over now?
Well, let's do this. Because I want to kind of do a group thing. Now, I had that outline, and like I said, it was just kind of a thing to get your guys' brains going. Would it be better if we started with community and building your community and then went with comms and then went with caches? Because that's kind of
however you want to do it.
Branching out and then moving out, bugging out if you got to bug out. So And Brian, we had you on a couple of episodes, and the idea of knowing who your neighbors are came up, and how to vet and find out who's around you. And
I think we typically in the Rangers we refer to it as community intelligence gathering.
Yeah.
So, having and it's not spying on your neighbors, but rather having information, data on your region, on your AO, on your area, so that you can actually know who the players are, whether they are threat players, whether they are allies, whether they are, anything from infrastructure to demographics can be very important.
Whether they're useful or not.
That analysis.
So whether they're useful or not, right?
Well, yeah, and that's a rating that they need to have on your plan. And I might add, both Howard and Chris are members of the Tennessee Ranger Squadron and are very involved in our outreach, our emergency response stuff. The Tennessee Rangers go out for every tornado, every flood. We're the first people that folks see when their house has been destroyed. And we go out there and we tend to find ourselves in areas that have lost infrastructure, whether it's cell towers or communication, and we have to deal with that process. That means radios, and a lot of the stuff that we do in the Tennessee Rangers as a training unit is we conduct training operations. We have a yearly training operation that we call Operation Sampan, and it's a downed pilot scenario, very similar to the Bat-21 mission in scope, where our unit is looking for a downed pilot, and that downed pilot is using a communications beacon to send out a signal. And the members of the Rangers have to use direction finding radios to find those downed pilots. And it's a really good program for getting guys familiar with how to use the most basic of radios, things like your Baofeng, UHF, VHF ham radio, to doing basic communications skill sets, everything from how to talk on a radio to how to program it and set it up. Howard has ran our communications course for the squadron, and it's a really good primer on learning how to use just this basic Baofeng radio. Now, there's a whole spectrum of things that and types of radios that you can use on that stuff, depending on what you're looking to do. Everything from mesh networks to DMR radios, long range HF, and the kind of things Howard loves to play with. So there's a broad spectrum of those things, and both Chris and Howard have been very involved in how we integrate that stuff into our training and deployment for the Rangers.
The great outdoors, a place where memories are made, where adventures are born, and where the spirit is rejuvenated. At Pyramid, our commitment goes beyond just providing gear. We're here to connect you to the right product and service, tailor-made for your adventures. Every moment outside is an opportunity to embrace our passion, to learn, to experience, to bond. We believe in the power of the outdoors. And with top-of-the-line gear from Pyramid, you're not just experiencing the wild, you're becoming a part of it. Guided by our vision, we strive every day to share our knowledge and passion for the vast, beautiful world outside. Because when you're armed with the best, every expedition becomes an incredible experience. Pyramid. Adventures in recreation.
Very cool.
So
Well,
Ryan,
focusing on the community, and we'll get to comms, but I want to focus on building your community. So you were talking about things that you can do to know about your neighbors. What are some things that people can do to research who's around them?
Yeah, well, it's an exercise in open source information gathering. So that's a one starting point, but also it boils down to communicating with your neighbors, meeting your neighbors, actually being out in the community, being involved. Things like having a block party or a barbecue can give you more awareness and information about who lives around you and what they're like and what their priorities are, and it can create discussion. So just having the ability to have neighbors and do things with them and know them, speak to them, it may sound old timey or old school to do that in this day and age, but it's important to know who your neighbors are.
No, absolutely. Especially with, the past few years, where we've seen the riots and things happen in other areas. We didn't really have them here in Tennessee. But
because the Tennessee Rangers shut them down at the
border,
Fifth and Broad, at the Battle of Fifth and Broad. So.
No,
go
ahead and talk about that for a second, Brian. It's a joke, but I mean, there was significant.
Yeah, and I tell you, it was a real testament to communications capability, open source intelligence collection, we got Tennessee Rangers has a subsidiary company called SAPS, and we're a licensed Tennessee armed security company, and we provide security to some of the most important locations, venues in Nashville, places like the Ryman Auditorium. And when that happened, when the riots were spinning up in Nashville, the numerous directors of security from all over Nashville, clientele of ours, reached out to us and said, "Hey, how do we deal with this? What's going on here?" And so we immediately started building an open source collection on that subject, on that effort. And we started looking at everything from chat rooms to internet social media,
Facebook's, Instagram pages.
everything. I mean, we were on everything you can imagine as far as that goes. Not to mention conducting communications interception of public radio, so fire and police radio, all that kind of thing. And then we created our own internal communications on the subject where we could analyze and gather information from around town. And on the in basically what happened is we had a large contingent of rioters, protesters, etc., that started to destroy downtown Nashville right there on Broadway. They were burning places, they were breaking glass, they were fighting, they were tearing up police cars. And we had multiple venues across Broadway that we provided those services for, security services for. And we deployed a small team downtown, and we basically moved our protection detail along where the threat was happening. And we shut the riders down at Fifth and Broad when it came to a very acute point. And basically we had to fight them for 8 minutes on Broadway to keep the riders from burning a Metro Police horse trailer down that had an injured horse in it. And and Metro SWAT responded. Metro SWAT came up and was the cavalry after 8 minutes of us dealing with it. And but communications was part of that. It was we were all running radios. We were using cell phones. We were using police scanners and radios.
Yeah. It sounds like you guys want to jump into comms.
Did I lose you?
No, you're back.
Before we get into comms, can we cover one thing? I kind of left that out on the front end, and I think it's huge, not only for community. If you do set
I think
up
I just
group,
lost you.
No, we got you.
You can leave everybody up if you want. You don't have to zoom in on me. I got an ugly face. Ryan, he's a lot prettier than me. If you want to bring Ryan up, but
like me, you got a face for radio, brother.
Yeah. So one thing I didn't talk about, and something widely used in special operations, and I'm not going to go across the line into classified or sensitive stuff, but it's called an escape and evasion plan. Okay. And what that E&E plan does, that's what they call it, an E&E plan. It allows you to set up a corridor of movement with time hacks that you're going to be at a certain point. And if whoever's looking to get you out of a bad situation, or a team that's going to go ahead and say, hey, you know what? If shit hits a fan, we're going to move from point A to point Z. And these are the timestamps in between that if we miss you at B, we'll go ahead and pick you up at C at this time hack. And I think that's important because, if you talk to your family and you're setting up some type of plan, you cannot rely on comms. You may have a watch on, you may know terrain features that you're going to link up at, and that could be your first check. But the key there is that everybody knows the time hacks. If it's shit hits a fan, that's zero time, and plus 6 hours, maybe, or plus 2 hours might be linking up at your home, or the plan could be to go to the cache site, as your first point. And then now you're in the what would be called the EDU corridor for a planned movement to get everybody linked up together. And if they've missed the first checkpoint, you can go on to the second one, the third one, the fourth one, and hopefully, everybody makes it to that point. And that's critical. And I just wanted to cover that because whether you're a group, a family, a community that puts into a plan like that, you got to plan for no comms because you might not have comms in that scenario. And it's good to have a predetermined corridor that you're going to move to link up. And then obviously have time hacks that you're going to do that at. And everybody is on the same sheet of music. So enough said on that. We can go into comms or whatever.
Just to add to that,
Yeah.
That's a great point. But also, I think you have to rehearse because if it's real world and it happens for the first time, you're not going to see anybody. There's no way. Even SF teams fuck it up when they try for the first time. If they don't rehearse it. So, and also there's a thing called signal operations. It's basically in SF it's a whole book full of codes and code words. They all mean a certain thing, but you can make it simple. You can make it for your family, make it for your community. Instead of sending exactly where you're at, you send out a message, go Vol, go Tennessee, and they know you're at your first checkpoint. Just simple stuff like that doesn't need to be too crazy.
Or develop a brevity matrix,
Yep, brevity matrix. And actually, Howard made a brevity matrix for the Tennessee Rangers.
Okay.
So that's kind of been done, but that's a great point, Ryan. You got to have something like that you can communicate where other people aren't going to pick it up and know what you're talking about. Great.
Yeah, I mean, you can't say you're at the Waffle House and exit whatever, because it's your people are listening, right? I mean,
right.
Bizarre.
Yeah.
So to have some sort of cover there is a great thing. But to divert back to Lefty's steering the conversation a minute ago into community, that was one of the things that got me into it. We were trying to do back in 2020, right? And it's hard. I mean, it's really hard because you've got different, you got different mindsets as to what's going to happen. You've got different people's willingness to commit resources or time or whatever to whether it's, developing these caches or stockpiles of food or ammunition or learning, how to operate weapons and do all those things. It was really difficult. And, was fortunate to find several what have turned out to be really good friends, and we put together a great radio network, and that's kind of the the shit hits the fan in a small community mentality for that area, and we lovingly call it CreekNet, but it really is hard to get different commitment levels. So the number one thing, regardless, you've got to eat, right? So you got to have food available, and some people have it, some people don't, some people don't want to worry about it. So you have to kind of think, well, what am I willing to do for my, the people in my network that aren't necessarily as committed as I am. And so there's been some of us that have, we literally at one point went out and bought a pallet of rice, and we containerized it, vacuum sealed it, oxygen absorbers, the whole thing, so it'll last for virtually ever. But we've at least got something that we can give to somebody that shows up, because you get people that say, "Hey, I know where I'm going when something happens," and it's like, "Well, are you? I mean, what are you bringing to the party when you come?" Right? You can't show up and be a burden. So
right, and that's why I wanted to bring it back to community, because what do you look for to add people to that network or that community, because you don't want to get too many alphas involved. You want to have somebody who's got diverse skill levels, assets that you said that they're bringing to the table. What are you bringing to the table? What are you going to contribute?
Whether that's resources or skills, or we had conversations about who do you let in and who not, and obviously you have some sort of an interview process.
Talk about those conversations in the interview process that maybe some of you guys use to build your community, your networks.
Well, there's a great point about the community and what Howard just said on food. And let me just kind of put this out there. And I put that in my document, and it's something I talked to, with the Rangers, and, when I put that out. You should have individual caches for your family, and you should not be telling anybody about them.
Even your network.
Even your network. Because I'm going to tell you, at the end of the day, that guy that's got a family and they're starving, he's not going to give a shit about you. And if he knows where your caches are, they're done.
Yeah.
So you need to plan for, if you're doing something with a group like the Tennessee Rangers, it's good to have your individual caches planned, and then have some Tennessee Ranger plans, planned. And regarding the caches, I was going to go over briefly with like what you want to keep those super small. Those are basically, 24 by 24 by maybe 36 that you're bearing a couple feet in the ground, and it's, vapor barriered with stuff that you can, heavy plastic that you can pick up from Lowe's. It's easy to build, but they're small, and it's just made to keep you alive for 72 hours. On the food side, think simple, stupid on it. The old KISS, keep it simple, stupid. You can take flour and grind up beef jerky and mix it half and half with flour into little balls. It's called pemmican rolls. They used to use these back during the Revolutionary War. And those pemmican balls, when you eat them and then you take a drink of water, will expand. And they got a lot of protein in them. You can put all kinds of things in these pemmican balls. You can put, dried bean. You can put with jerky. There's all kinds of things you can mix with flour to make those. And they last forever. Once you make them, you just throw them in a Ziploc bag and they store really well inside a container.
So like a sausage ball. It's like my mom makes sausage balls during the holidays.
Well, I wouldn't mix sausage because that's I would use dried beef,
Sure.
that you've cured and then grind it
That's
up
the
in a
purpose,
grinder.
yeah. I mean, you want something that's gonna keep. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. And on that also rice will last forever. Stuff like rice, flour, dried beans, beef jerky that you've cured. That's what I would focus on. Water, I wouldn't worry about too much. I mean, we're in Tennessee. There's water everywhere. You just need a way to either use iodine tablets or something that you're gonna, clean the water through. I would recommend, iodine tablets for that. It's the easiest thing. Throw them in there, shake it up, or burn a fire, use charcoal, run it through that. I mean, there's things that you can do. And I mean, that probably is a whole nother segment on outdoor survival that you can get into. How you get clean water.
Yeah. I mean, you need your carbohydrates and stuff like that, which are going to come from the rice. You also need protein, which is red beans, dark beans. Those last forever. One misconception is that you can hunt your way, through it. Wild game doesn't have enough fat to literally keep the brain alive. You have to find a different source of fat.
You got to have fat.
I mean, it's either got to be fish, cold water fish if possible.
Find some really bad fat people, and when you're out there doing away.
If you're fortunate enough to have hogs in your area, then you're probably in pretty good shape. But deer, turkey, squirrel, rabbit, all that they don't have it. It's not there.
Yeah. Do we want to
talking about community and how do you select the people in your community? It's a process of having an inner guard, the very closest people in your family unit, and growing out from there to your outer guard. And, that's really a selection process and a social skill that, requires learning and a real selection of the type of people that you offer into your plan, into your supplies, all of that. It's the inner guard and the outer guard and how they fit. So, it's like I said, it's a selection.
So here's a fact about the pemmican balls. The name comes from the Cree word, whatever that is, which is derived from the word fat or grease. So it's an old Indian word.
Yeah, Indians actually used to use bear fat with flour and corn mesh that they used to make it with. But I've always used beef jerky, and I'm going to tell you, like, if you're out hunting for days and days, it's great. It is a good source of, keeping you sustained while you're out there. And I mean, any of these plans, it's not going to be a forever plan. I mean, it's going to be, initially 72 hours when you hit a cache site that you have food in there when you leave. And then from there, you just, go to your next cache and gather what you do on the way.
I think
Right.
a lot of people forget, we forget the skill sets of our grandparents. I'm one generation away from shitting in an outhouse, and I don't, it's kind of hard to get too wrapped around the haunches about getting food when, the real lesson of the day is you're going to be fucking hungry. It's gonna suck. And if you can get a bag of cornmeal and make some cornbread, or you can get, a chicken, or you can get a little bit of salt. These are the struggles of every single day for poor people. And, there's folks in North Carolina and East Tennessee living like that right now that struggle from day to day to get food in their system. So, it's basically you're going to have to deal with the struggle more than anything. It is nearly impossible to prep to have food that's going to be ready in a Mad Max scenario where you're living large, eating your beef jerky, eating your pemmican. These are skills. They're not necessarily supplies that you're going to have. So,
And
just
the fact that you have
get ready
these
to be poor.
supplies doesn't mean you're going to be able to use them. It's like Ryan says, you got to practice this stuff. So if to make this stuff, you got to practice actually making a pemmican ball, or putting together a cache and going out and actually burying it, and being able to find it, doing your escape and evasion routes. You got to practice this stuff. This isn't something that you can just have a manual on, and then when the shit hits the fan, you refer to that manual, and then you're automatically going to know what's going on. That's not how it works. You have to actually put it in practice and do it before.
Yeah, I mean, you might have a better success rate with having one cow in a pen and another pig in a pen and a chicken coop. That's because that's how people live in the mountains. That's how hillbillies live. That's how my papaw lived. And it was a struggle from day to day to eat and feed your family. So it's a broad spectrum of things. These are skill sets, not necessarily supplies you're going to have.
Yeah, we've just touched on, very few potential options. And I don't know about advertising for books or anything. This isn't my book. It's just one I have handy. But there are books that have a lot of the old stuff in them, how to do things, whether it's build a fire, how to make pemmican, all that.
Hold that up. What is it?
It's an old book. It's a book called The Lost Ways, and it just talks about how they used to do things.
Looks like a Bible.
It is.
Could be survival Bible, maybe. But
who's the author of that book? Hold it up for our listeners in case they want to get that.
This is it's from askaprepper.com.
Okay.
But yeah, it's called The Lost Ways. It's just the forgotten secrets of how to do just common stuff, right? Because one of the things that I tell my guys that work with me, I'm like, if there's ever a question, they're like, Google it, right? Whatever. And I always say, if the internet ever goes down, we're going to be dumb as a box of rocks because we don't know anything anymore. So learn something, know it, know what you know, and understand what you don't know, and then learn something else. But don't guess, right?
Well, I think the key of this,
you can't guess.
I think the key of this discussion is you got everybody on this discussion has a good background in survival. And I think sharing some basic, we're not the end all know all of all this crap, but I think if somebody listens to this podcast and they walk away 1% smarter over something they heard on this thing or something they didn't realize or know, I think we've accomplished something. That's kind of been my thing is not trying to be the best or most knowledgeable, but
I want to touch on a couple more things about the caches, tomatoes, tomatoes. You're talking about, putting together, do some kind of a liner. What kind of containers do you recommend that?
All right. So I'll just go over this real briefly. So if you go to Lowe's or Home Depot, you can buy like a 3 mil vapor barrier roll that you can roll out, and that thing expands out to about 10 feet. So any cache, I would cut the sheet 10 by 10 foot by 10 foot. And you're making a cache that's 24 inches by 24 inches by 36 inches long. And basically what you're doing is you're placing your items in the center of that and then folding it, right? And then running 100-mile-an-hour tape around it. Then you turn it over on another 10-foot by 10-foot sheet. You do the same thing. Fold it over, wrap it up, and then you turn it over again, and you wrap it 3 times with 3 of those sheets. And that's your cache bundle. Now, do you want to go into like what
You're not putting it in like a tub or
no,
anything?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No.
That's
it
good
is
to know.
just in a triple roll of like 3 millimeter vapor barrier. And you can run 100-mile-an-hour tape. Exactly. And when I place that in a hole, you're only going down a couple feet just to put it in a hole. And you can actually take another sheet and put it over top of that and then put the dirt on it to keep it away, from it. In water will seep kind of around it. They've held up good. I put one in and it's lasted 3 years. I pulled it back out and there was nothing wrong with what was inside it.
Now, what type of things should people put in a cache? I mean, we talked about food, obviously.
All right. So these are the things that I would go ahead and put. What type of rounds? Ryan, if you want to chime in, or Brian on these, but I would recommend the most of any round out there is probably a 7.62 by 39, the old AK round. There's more of those in the world than any other round. 5.56 and 9 mil are probably the other 2 predominant rounds. All this other shit, 40 cal, maybe some shotgun rounds if you want to carry a shotgun with you, but I'm putting either 5.56 or AK rounds and maybe even a weapon in my cache that I can break down and put in there. I would probably, a short AR or something like that. So ammo, whatever round one of the most common rounds, medical items. And what I got for medical items, rubber gloves. Always have rubber gloves in there, because one thing you can do with a rubber glove, you can cut the finger off a rubber glove. And on the open end of the rubber glove, you create a V on it, and you can drop an 8 or a 10 gauge needle down through and push it through the end of that tip of the finger. And you can use that as a flutter valve for any type of chest relief, whether it's air or blood. You can insert it between the 3rd, 4th, or 4th, 5th intercostal where you have the space here, stick it in to relieve air. If you have a sucking chest wound, they're great for that. I've seen them used in the field.
So
saran wrap.
Supplies,
well, hang on. 100-mile-an-hour tape, paracord, 550 cord, syringes. I would have 8 and 10 gauge syringes in there. Antibiotics. So you can go out on the web and Amazon, and any form of penicillin you can buy that, whether it's Cipro, amoxicillin, clindamycin, you can get those forms in a pet form for $30 for 500 or 100 tablets and 500 milligram in any form of penicillin. And it's the exact same things that they use for humans. And I would put different variations.
Take horse paste?
Excuse me?
What's that?
Are you telling us to take horse paste?
No, it's not
ivermectin. No, I'm just joking around.
No, it's not ivermectin.
That was a COVID joke.
Hang on.
Joe Rogan joke.
Oh. Are we going to show our ivermectin stashes at this point? Is that what
No.
No, but antibiotics, I mean, think about it. A simple cut could be the end. I mean, it could be, it could.
Okay, I'm going to show you one.
Simple antibiotic.
So, this is called Fish Mox. It is amoxicillin in a 500 milligram tablet. Basically, anytime I have something, whether it's a sinus infection or whatever, you can buy any of these. It's called Fish Mox. It's the same amoxicillin that you get. I've had it tested. And most of your 18 deltas highly recommend this.
Nice.
It's the same exact things. You can get it in different variations. You can get ciprofloxacin, clindamycin, all 3 forms that you would need out there. You can buy and just throw it in your cache for later use.
Something that I would highly advise in that area, which, not all antibiotics are made for all things, right? So some are for, urinary tract things, some are upper respiratory. Find somebody in your sphere that knows what it's used for what the milligram count that you need to take, what the dose cycles are, and for what duration.
Yep.
Package it that way so it's a dose, so you're not opening the pack and blowing the whole thing, and put a card in there that says this is what it's for. Take this many times a day for this many days.
Yeah.
And having some of those folks in my sphere, having had these conversations, their antibiotics either get stronger, they get weaker. They don't go bad, right? So if it's kicks it in shorter time than you anticipated, then it got stronger. If it doesn't, then you continue. You pop another pack and you keep going and you take it until it gets rid of it. But
yeah, and if they're allergic to penicillin, they have a Cipro form in this. So if they're allergic to penicillin, they can use the Ciproflex or Cipro form.
Something else that you can do, if indeed you don't have anybody in your sphere and you want to do some preparation, let's say just for your family, you can feed in data to AI, and you can have AI design you a medical cheat sheet on what would be the types of drugs that you would need to give for each type of illness with each of your family members, and have each of them outlined. You can feed in data points to AI and create a plan. You can create your own medical document on the supplies that you have. How would these be used? What would the dosage be on a 13 to 15-year-old? What would it be on a 43 to 48-year-old? And you can feed that data in and really create yourself a medical field manual designed exactly for your family. But you need to do it before the grid goes down, or you're not going to have, access to
I'm
grok.
going to say that. Yeah, you need to do it now.
And print it off.
So I'm going to finish running through these items that we recommend putting in a cache. One of the things that I kind of briefly, I didn't tell you why, but saran wrap or Ziploc bags, those are actually good for closing a hole like a sucking chest wound. You can place the bag or the saran wrap over top of it. You don't need the high speed, ones that like NAR sell, North American Rescue. You can use saran wrap or a Ziploc bag for that.
Potato chip bag.
Yeah, anything. Quick clot, any type of quick clot powder that you can, to try to stop. You probably want to get a set of forceps too, just in case you got to, tie off the end of an artery or something if it's, bleeding bad. Gauze pads, any type of gauze roll, something you can stuff into a wound if you need to.
Do you know what on a quick clot, do they have shelf lives on those? They got like expiration dates and.
I've not seen a shelf life on quick clot. And I mean, those things, it's a powder. You can get them in two forms, like powder that's inside the gauze. Here's another one people don't think of, a box of tampons. Tampons actually have a quick clot type powder in them for women. And you can stuff a wound with tampons and it will work to prevent bleeding, believe it or not. If you have a gunshot wound in the side and you stick a tampon in there, it's going to, temporarily help you out until you can get medical attention or better attention. It's going to mitigate it a little bit. Yeah. All right. Some other stuff. Suture kit, any type of suture kit or the needles that are curved that you can use for a quick suture, super glue, a space blanket. Let's talk about the use of a space blanket a second. If you're in an E&E and people, obviously there could be a scenario where you're being hunted. You don't know. There could be bad guys looking for people because maybe they know you were previously in the military, and maybe they have a record of people that were in the military and they're looking for you. A space blanket in a very shallow, just shallow pit with a space blanket over you is going to cover your thermal signature. Those are great for hiding. Fire starter kit, any type of thing to start a fire, flashlight, preferably either a green or red lens, ability on that. A knife. I don't really go into I put survival shovel, but I'm going to be honest with you, I wouldn't fucking carry a shovel. Added weight. You can dig minor things, with a good knife or something else. I'm a biggie on fucking carrying a tomahawk. Tomahawk, you brand a tomahawk and a knife at somebody, and they're either going to turn around and go away, or, you know, if that's your last fighting tool, I'd rather have a tomahawk and go to town on somebody with a fucking knife than not have anything in my hand. Scissors, tweezers, emergency radio. We'll let Howard and Ryan cover in on some basic stuff that you can use for, comms or listening devices. Long-range two-way radio, CB radio. I probably wouldn't use a CB radio. I put that in there just in case somebody had it and they had and their comms plan was to get on a ham radio or CB. Compass, and obviously food. And under food, I covered flour, dried meat, peanuts, rice, basic stuff that is going to last forever that you can eat, and dried beans. And that's pretty much it in the cache.
How about some sort of a radio device so you can try to keep in touch with what's going on?
So let me touch on one thing on that. Okay. I would, and Ryan brought this up, practice. You got to practice what you're going to do. If I don't know what the environment is in the first 72 hours, do I really want to be on a fucking radio? Excuse my French. Do I want to be on a radio potentially giving up if somebody's, triangulating and we don't know? I don't know. I would rather have an E&E plan with a timed hack and people know exactly where they're going until I've linked up with the most important people in my life, and then worry about trying to communicate outward to someone.
Well, I'm not talking about communicate radio. I'm talking about listening radio. So you can listen.
Well, you're still giving a signal, aren't you, Howard, Ryan?
No, well, I think he's talking about a radio receiver in like an FM, AM, FM radio, like a hand crank radio, that kind of thing. Yeah. I think those kind of things can be helpful. Absolutely.
Yeah, whether it's a scanner or a handheld UHF, VHF that'll also scan, you're going to want to listen because you're going to want information so you know what to do.
Right. Yeah.
And unless you're transmitting, you're not putting out an RF signature. So.
I got that for my daughter. I'm trying to get her in the mindset of, and this one has a little thing where it winds, doesn't use batteries. You can charge it up, got a flashlight on it. She plays with it. But you can turn this thing on and listen to pretty much any station. Once you start winding it, there was a red light there.
Hold it up. There you go. Yeah.
So it's
something like that's what I'm talking about. Just hand crank that doesn't require batteries. Just so you can just kind of keep touch with what's going on.
And it's got solar too.
Solar, nice, yeah.
Yeah, cheap. They're under $30, and they give you the ability to listen to the radio, or it's actually got the emergency broadcast system on it that you can turn it over and listen to the emergency broadcast on it, or AM, FM. Something basic like that. You can throw these in a cache and wind them up. If you need to listen to something. As far as comms, though, I would be, I don't know. If I didn't know the environment or what's going on yet, I think I would be hesitant to use any type of outward communication until I knew exactly what was going on. I just wanted to say that.
No, that's good. And I want to get into comms next. I want to spend the next, the majority of our time on the comms, but back to the escape and evasion and the caches. What about fuel?
Okay, so on fuel, and I've mentioned this to a couple of rangers. A lot of people don't realize this. Every one of your transformers sitting on a telephone pole has exactly 5 gallons of diesel fuel in it.
I did not know.
Anybody know that?
I didn't know that.
Well, yeah. It's a hybrid fluid that is similar to transmission fluid and diesel mix. Yeah. And it can be used in diesel vehicles. It can be used in diesel vehicles, but I'll tell you this: it won't run my Range Rover that requires DEF, and it won't run my Dodge truck. But it might run. It won't run my 2022 Dodge truck, but it'll run a 1984 Ford
John Deere tractor.
Or a tractor. So there's one of the things you got to think about on that.
It'll run my F-250 truck. I know that for a fact. Yeah. And all you do is you back your truck up, the bed up underneath the transformer, put a tarp on it for collection with a barrel below it, and you shoot a 22 through the bottom of it, and it'll drip into the tarp, right into a can. Now, you can also use vegetable oil. and where I'm going with this, I highly recommend, a vehicle in an older model, like Brian said, that runs on diesel. Diesel is used in fishing boats, pretty much all commercial. There's more commercial diesel fuel available out there than gasoline, and people are going to be going for gasoline. So,
yeah.
You just need to put a catheter on your hog out in the lot, Brian, and capture, because DEF is nothing but hog urine.
Yeah, I know it's pig piss. It's pig piss.
Pig piss.
And by the way, did you know Buc-ee's actually has a DEF dispenser at the diesel pumps?
Yeah.
I was blown away.
What don't they have at Buc-ee's? Buc-e's has everything.
That's
Like
they don't let fucking tractor trailers to go into Buc-ee's though.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
Oh, they don't? I didn't know that.
No, they won't allow them on their lot.
Yeah, no tractor trailers at Buc-ee's.
I tried
to pull one into the parking lot. There was nobody else in this whole parking lot where I was parked, eating one of their barbecue sandwiches I just bought, and a lady walked all the way out and told me I couldn't be parked there.
Oh.
Yeah, like, they don't have seats either, so there's nowhere to sit down to eat your sandwich at Buc-ee's.
Right.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that.
I did notice that.
They have low signature white concrete, which minimizes the heat signature of their lots because they're so big. They create so much heat if it's black pavement.
So a good resource for fuel is when you build your community people, all the people you did not want in are people you target for fuel.
Well, I'll tell you another way to do this is you create friendships in your community, and you make friends with the guy that owns the gas station, and then you provide security for the gas station when shit hits the fan. It's the only way you're going to really have true access to fuel, unless you've got your own giant fuel tank full of all the different fuels you need for your stuff. And that's an option.
I wouldn't be surprised if Buc-ee's didn't have hidden machine guns that pop up and they're ready for the apocalypse at Buc-ee's, baby.
And you guys are going to think this is funny, but it makes a lot of sense to me for building intel packages for people in the community and stuff. My wife will find out anything about anybody in about 10 minutes using social media.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's instant. She'll know exactly.
People are stupid. They tell you everything on there.
Yeah.
There's probably, that's a good point about collection and intelligence in a scenario where you don't know what's going on. If you've got a community, something that's used in the intelligence, and it's not going to cross the border into, confidential or anything like that. It's pretty much widely known out there. But there's something that you use if you're in an environment called a surveillance detection matrix. Okay. If you're an operator and you're out there in civilian clothes out in bad areas and you're driving around and you notice a certain car following you, when you get back to the team house or wherever you're going, you write that car and anything you noticed about it on the surveillance detection matrix. It can be used in a community aspect. If you have a neighborhood and they're seeing a car coming in casing and it's on your surveillance detection matrix that you've shared with the community and it's in there day after day after day, that would be somebody probably that you would want to keep an eye on. And a surveillance detection matrix is a great asset to use in those environments where you're trying to share or build a matrix. It's simple, vehicle, license plate if you had it, color, make, model. And or it can be used for personnel, when you're out there. I noticed this guy, this is what he looked like, put that on there. He seemed like he was kind of casing around where we were at.
Today we're cleaning the SIG P365. You're going to want to follow the SIG guidelines for disassembly and reassembly. You're going to want to take the firearm apart, put it out piece by piece, and then you're going to grab your favorite Seal 1 CLP Plus product. Whether it's paste, liquid, or aerosol, they're all going to do the same thing. Today we're using the paste, and you can see that it comes out and it spreads very easily. Using the nylon brush, you're going to go in and you're going to cover the entire firearm, inside and out. We are safe on all metals, plastics, composites, rubber, wood, leather. So you're going to go piece by piece, putting it on there, wiping it on to clean it. Then you're going to go back and you're going to wipe it off. Remember, Seal 1 is a wipe on, wipe off process. Use Q-tips to get down in the little nooks and crannies that the microfiber cloth does not get to. Wipe it all off, and do not forget to do the magazine. Periodically, you're going to want to take the magazine apart to clean the insides. You're going to reassemble according to the manufacturer's guidelines. Get it together. You're going to perform a function test, make sure it's operating properly, and then you're done. Remember, seal one and done.
Seal One is a proud sponsor of the Talking Lead podcast and the Leadhead Brigade.
One of the
Use
things
code
that,
Leadhead for
that
25%
Rangers had us
off
do,
discount.
early on was take some intelligence gathering on online courses. So wherever you are, you've got your area of operation, and I still do this. Whether I see a generator on a street corner with a big fuel tank underneath it, I drop a pin. Who knows, that might become handy. If you see assets out in the community that seem like they might be able to be put to good use if something happened, mark it.
Hey, I pinned Howard Jones' location. I know when shit hits the fan where to go get weapons and nods and stuff like that.
Do you have the secret handshake? That's the question.
He's probably heavily fortified also.
The RF handshake, yeah.
I think I have good handshake.
So the last episode that I did on prepping, I had this gentleman called Jeff Kirkham. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Jeff Kirkham. He's a former Green Beret, but he's also an author, and he wrote the Black Autumn book series that's just recently been turned into one of those TV. It was a movie, and then they were doing like a TV series on it also. But the community aspect that he gets into and talks about, it's good. So if you guys want to go back to that, I want to move on and get into comms now.
I'm going to step out for a second. I'll be right back before we get into that, if that's all right.
Well, damn it, that's. I'm just kidding. Go ahead. I'm just messing with you.
Damn it, Howard.
So while he's going and taking care of business there, any final thoughts that we want to put on the community, the caches? Anyone? Ryan, you haven't really chimed in much on the.
Well, we call them caches.
Caches. Yeah, I've heard both.
Cache.
I've heard both.
Oh, I mean,
I've heard Brits call it a cachie.
well, I haven't heard that.
Yeah.
Is that what Lee calls it?
That's what Lee calls it. He called it that. I said, just stop it, Lee. Stop.
Lee, shut up, Lee.
Everything Lee says sounds fucked up. I mean, he's a great guy. I love Lee to death, man. His accent just blows my mind sometimes.
Damn Brits.
Damn Brits.
No, I think, to wrap up the community thing, the real trick to dealing with community is having that communication with your people. You've got to get out and talk. You got to meet people. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, right?
Well, and
Right.
Brian, to add to that, just since we're still kind of talking about community, kind of going to comms, is a few guys that are good friends around here, I've asked them like, hey, I kind of want to do some prepping for a comms plan in our community here. Would you mind if I put this at your house or something? And, they're kind of hesitant. I just want to put this solar panel with a little radio module on your roof. And they're like, wait, what is this for? So they didn't really comprehend. They weren't really, I could have talked them into it, but I didn't really press too hard. So that's just something to think about,
The best time to do that's when they're not at home.
Exactly.
Or
Well,
I've got neighbors that are moving and the house is vacant right now before the next people move in. So.
I
And
hope
I think
Howard
what
covers.
you're talking about, Ryan, you're talking about mesh networks. Is that right?
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and I hope Howard covers what he's done with some of the repeaters in Tennessee when you talk about comms.
Okay.
What'd I do?
Well, let's do that. So, and I've got listener questions too, so we may get some more questions, and we'll come back to some things maybe we jumped over. But let's jump into the comms now. So, just starting off basic, what should people know about getting into the communications? And we'll start with Ryan.
Well, I think.
Or Brian.
I'm sorry, did you say Ryan or Brian?
Ryan.
They're pretty
Ryan,
much the same.
you're the
Every time I
comms
introduce myself to
guy.
anybody, they think my name's Brian. So every time.
You both have the why.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go ahead. Just basic radio use. I think you guys hit on it your last podcast, but people don't understand how to use the radio. That's kind of a hard thing to get over, but also they don't understand how they work. They think they're going to turn on the radio and it's just going to talk. The package will say it talks for 20 miles, and obviously a radio. Usually radios don't talk past a kilometer. Terrain dependent, obviously, unless you're talking on mountaintops. So just basic knowledge like that. Power. How much power are you going to need? Batteries. How many batteries do you have? Can you run a radio off of like a crank we just saw, or will it be powered by a solar system, solar panel? Just basic stuff like that, just so people can wrap their head around what they're actually using. And obviously, talking on the radio checks. This is
When
me.
we're saying radios right now, you're talking like walkie-talkies, right?
Yeah. People think they know how to use a walkie-talkie, but they really don't. They never use them. So it's just kind of.
That's kind of what I want to get into this episode, is differentiating and educating people on a walkie-talkie, your basic, that you can go to Walmart and you get these package of 5s or, whatever for the family, versus going up, more technical, better range, that kind of stuff, until we're getting into
HF, UHF, VHF.
One of the things I think is great about, this group of people that's together is, Ryan, having done military comms and worked with high level gear from the top down. Me originally, I'm a hillbilly from East Tennessee that might have learned a thing or two. Mine's based from the ground up, right? Because in my opinion, as something happens, and the technology ladder that I call it is going to collapse. So if you're all the way up into DMR, even the mesh-tastic stuff, all that kind of stuff, it's going to collapse. If it collapses far enough, it'll collapse all the way back to analog.
Yeah. And that's kind of the progression that I want to take is, all right, we've got a scenario where it's a tornado or it's a flood or, whatever, and we're using our basic comms to where we get into total societal collapse and EMPs and, that kind of stuff, and kind of progress.
Does Ryan or Howard kind of want to go up the difference between UHF, VHF, and HF real quick, just to give the audience?
I'm going to leave it up to them on whether they want to talk about the actual equipment, and then we get into the frequencies and that type stuff. Whatever you guys think is the natural progression, I'm going to let you do that.
Ryan, if you want to take that, that'd be great.
So the easiest way to explain the frequencies, ultra high frequency, super high frequency. For layman, I would just say the lower frequencies are going to travel, or HF, the lower frequencies are going to travel further. When you get the SHF, UHF, usually talking satellite communications, but HF can also go what we call beyond line of sight, which can be thousands of miles. For instance, we're now deployed to Central South America. We would be doing HF shots to Florida. That uses the ionosphere to bounce. Basically, you're bouncing off the globe a few hops to get back to Florida from Guatemala and stuff like that. So I think ham radio and CB are in the I think CB is 57 megahertz, ham's 400.
Well, there's multiple ham bands all the way from 160 meters, which is 1.5 megahertz, all the way up into UHF.
So how many different frequencies are there? 3 hertz to 3,000 hertz, right?
I wish I had
Gigahertz.
sent this graphic, because there's one I use with Rangers. We have an intro to radio course that kind of goes through a lot of this basic.
I can pull up a website if you know a website or something.
Just do a search for US FCC frequencies, and it'll take you. If you look at what's actually available for ham radio, they're tiny slivers. There's a colored graphic that.
Yeah, go to images and you'll find it.
Is this it?
Yep.
No, there's a better one to show you how small that world is in the actual RF spectrum.
All right, just keep talking and I'll look for it.
But
it's super narrow, right? So, you also have to know, if you're trying to put, so like we have an MCOM plan, an emergency communications plan, and it talks about, if you think of the RF airspace as, let's say, the US, right? And you've got people that you want to connect with. If you don't have an MCOM plan that says we're gonna try to connect on this frequency at this time on this day, it would be like saying, Ryan, you're in South Florida and I'm in Minnesota. Let's meet up. It's literally that. The RF spectrum is that diverse. You'd never find each other ever, unless you knew where to start. So you have to devise that. This lends into what Chris was talking about. If you're gonna meet up with people, you've got points where you're going to check in or whatever. You've got to know where. You got to know where to listen. So
is that a good chart for what I've got there? Is that?
No, that looks more like just audible frequency.
Yeah, that's just the audio frequency spectrum.
Yeah.
I should have sent you our field manual, Marty. I apologize.
That's okay.
But anyway, so the other thing you need to know is, especially in, as part of doing intelligence gathering in your area of operation, if you have a scanner, it's great, because you need to scan and find out what's active in your world, right? And you've got everything from EMS, schools, you got SCADA systems, which are industrial monitoring, river levels, wastewater treatment, all that put out, data signals. When you know where all those active frequencies are in your world, you can filter those out. And then when you're listening and you hear something anomalous, you can go, is that a threat, right? So, yeah, that there you go. Zoom way in on that.
I'm trying. This isn't letting me zoom.
Because the actual ham band frequency there are just slivered in the landscape. But but knowing where you can go, right? So there's resources like radioreference.com or repeaterbook.com that'll tell you a lot of what your EMS frequencies are and what your middle frequencies are in your area. You don't want to be on those to talk, but you may want to go there and listen. So you can build what's called a code plug, which is, you can use software like Chirp, enter all that stuff in, and it even will pull from those resources and load for your area into that. You can have up to 999, channels that you can load into a Baofeng, and then you've got a great resource of stuff there to go listen to, everything from NOAA radio to your police stuff, whatever. Now it won't decode like P55 or P25 stuff, or like our local law enforcement stuff have gone to encryption. It's not going to listen to any of that, but you'll need a digital scanner to get through the P25 encoding. But knowing what's going on around you is huge, right? Because then you know what's real, what's new, and
Howard. Sorry to stop you there. To build on that, we mentioned Chirp. If you're in your community and you're the only guy that knows what you're doing, and you have that software on your computer, you can have your neighbors, your buddies buy the radios. They give it to you, and you just clone all the radios. Makes it just a simpler process than hand jam and everything.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because not everybody has to do. Not everybody has to have the education and training that you have, Ryan, or has to do the year and a half, 2-year deep dive I did. Let the people around you benefit from that time spent, and just here's how it works. Turn it on, go to this frequency, key down. This is where you need to be, right? Rather than have to literally figure it out from scratch, like we did. VHF, UHF, that stuff's not all that complicated. But when we tried to get into the HF world, that was about a year-long pain in the butt, and people that claim they know don't know.
I'd love to pick your brain about that. But yeah.
Hey, and here's a plug. Here's a plug for the Tennessee Rangers. For $1,000 a day, you can join a class of 10 people, $1,000 each, and Howard Jones will show your community how to communicate.
Yeah.
How many base courses is that?
So
that was a joke. We're a nonprofit.
Yeah, right. Hey, speak for yourself, man.
It's a donation. It's a $1,000 a day donation.
Howard loves to talk about this shit, so he should charge for this.
Hey, I'm a nerd, man. I'm a major nerd. There's no doubt about
it. But what he really exists as is our comms guy. Our senior comms guy in the formation, and he does become the guy that helps us program our radios, that helps build our MCOM plan. That's his role, and that's what he does, and it's extremely valuable. And he then gets to train the trainer and build the curriculum for everybody that the rest of the guys in the other platoons can take to their group and their unit and get everybody spun up. It's important, and it's also a gear selection process. Uniformity is a really good thing, and some radios will talk to each other and others won't, and certain radios are good for one thing and others aren't. UHF works really well indoors and in built up areas, and VHF works really well along long distances and line of sight. So then you've got things like commercial radios. You've got your standard Motorola radio that's what do you see at every construction site or bar or restaurant. These require a commercial license, where basically you own the frequencies. One of the things you can do with those, you can take a DMR radio, and you can actually have encryption. So a DMR radio can run both analog frequencies like UHF, but then also work on the DMR digital digital frequencies. And with that, you can do actual 256-bit encryption. And so that's a really good resource. But they're used for different things. Then you've got your Baofeng, which is probably completely unsecured type of radio, but it's the basics, and it gets you learning the process, and it acts as a scanner, as well as a communication device. So
hey Brian, hold the two of those radios up, that and the Motorola.
So Motorola, and
hold up so you can see the face. The big thing here is the Baofeng is face programmable. You don't have to have a laptop to do that. With Motorola, you have to have their proprietary software and a laptop, right? So if you're in the field, and that Motorola probably has 16 channels, right?
Right.
Baofeng will hold, I think, 999 or
yeah.
199.
Yeah, and these radios will talk to each other. They're not necessarily supposed to, with legality, depending on if you're licensed or not or whatever. But
there's
bottom line.
But here's the thing: in a shit hits the fan scenario, who gives a shit about legality?
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
but to be clear, as far as the law is concerned, in an emergency, whether it's for you or the community as a whole, the group, you can use any frequency to get help. It's legal, whether you're a licensed ham operator or not. If it's for your safety or your well-being or to save somebody's life, it is legal to go on any frequency and call for help.
Then you've got radios like this, which are basically the exact same thing as a Baofeng. This is just a military styled case. It's supposed to look like an embedder. Is that right, Ryan?
The Harris radio.
It looks like the Harris radio. But this is just a Baofeng. This is just the same thing as a regular ham radio, but it's got a little bit more wattage on it, a little bit different antenna configurations, the remote microphone. But then you can get into things like Beartooth and the mesh networks, and that's when you start stepping into using data, GPS, those type of things. And ATAC, using planning and coordination software like ATAC to coordinate and figure out where your team's at. You can relay certain points of data, that kind of stuff. It's like you've seen the military radios that everybody uses. You see Garantham with the military radio with the multiple antennas sticking up. That's a data network radio. What's it called? I forget, Ryan.
That's probably an MPU. That's an MPU-5. Yeah.
MPU-5, right? The MPU-5. Well, that thing's $35,000,
Yeah.
but you can do a lot of the same things with a Meshtastic network, or a Meshtastic radio system, like Beartooth, or even some of the configurable customer built Meshtastic radios. I'd love to hear Ryan's take on that stuff.
Well, actually, for my job right now, the Go antennas, you can
Right.
you can incorporate ATAC with those pretty easily.
Yep.
You just Bluetooth to the phone, and you got a SA, situational awareness, worldwide. So
now, is GoTenna are the good GoTennas, are they strictly military law enforcement, or can civilians get those now?
You can buy them right now. Yeah.
Well, what is a GoTenna?
It's basically a sat antenna, data only, I believe, and it Bluetooths to your phone. There's an app for that, and you can. It's basically GPS data, and so you can share your location. You can have group chats. You can incorporate ATAC, which basically bring you up on. If people don't know what ATAC is, it's Android tactical kit basically, and it'll put you on a map on your phone anywhere in the world, as long as you hit an internet gateway, and you can share your location. You can group chat. You
guys brought up a thing. I think it was an app earlier. You said something about Chirp. What is Chirp?
Chirp is it's a software program that it's Mac, Linux, or PC, and it's just a resource to create radio channels. So when you're looking at radios like the Bay of Things, you've got frequency mode and you've got channel mode, right? And in frequency mode, you've got an A and B frequency. You can enter those frequencies in manually. You can adjust them however you want. You can put in privacy tones, CTS, TCS, whatever. And that's something we should probably get into as well, because when you start talking about this, you start getting into privacy. You start getting into not being detected, right? You don't want to be found. But then you have channel mode, and Chirp operates on the channel mode side. So in there, you can actually program in, say, channel 1 can be the Franklin repeater, channel 2 can be the Fairview repeater, whatever. And you've got quick access to those, because, in some of those aspects, you have to have not only know the input frequency to the repeater, but you also have to know its access tone to get into it, right?
Now we're talking to like novices here that people are wanting to know all this. So what's a repeater? Talk about.
Well, so you've got VHF and UHF repeaters, all over the place, and Repeater Book will show you that. You can go in and search that in your area and find out what they are. Sometimes they're a little cryptic about what the access tone is, but when you've got a repeater, and let's say the input frequency is 144 megahertz, right? There's a subaudible tone that you can add to that is, and it can be CTCS, which is continuous tone squelch, or it can be TCS, which is tone coded squelch. With tone coded squelch, it's a single subaudible tone that opens the input to the repeater, so then it will then rebroadcast what you're sending out. With the continuous tone coded squelch, it's actually a series of numbers that it goes through. I think it's 3-digit numbers. It goes through them forward and backward, and it has to keep that sequence up to keep the repeater open. So if you can have the frequency, but if you don't have the tone to open the repeater to get into it, you're not going to be able to hit it and transfer up to that.
I feel like we're getting
I know, but
I love that, Howard. That's great.
Chirp, right?
Good explanation.
You would never remember
talking to Ryan and talk to us lay people here.
Well, but you would never remember that information if you were out in the field and you're trying to navigate your way home doing an E&E thing. You'd never say, well, this repeater in Antioch is this, and this repeater, in Murfreesboro is this. You'd never know that. You'd never be able to remember that. But by having a Chirp code plug where you've got all that listed, and you can have multiples of them in there where you then upload that to the radio. And all your information's there. You can even have it if you're going on vacation and you want to set up a completely different code plug for that trip. You could set that up with specific locations, and put all that repeater information in your radio and load it, and then you're good to go.
What the hell is that, Brian?
So this is a repeater.
It's a jet
So-
backpack.
So yeah, this is a repeater. This is a standard Hytera repeater that works on both analog frequencies, so UHF frequencies, but also on DMR. And the way this thing would be used, and there's different types of repeaters. So there's UHF, VHF, DMR. This DMR will allow you to run encryption communications through it. So basically, what typically the way repeaters are used is they're put in a high location, so on a mountaintop, on a tower, on a roof, and they act as a high powered node for other possibly lower powered radios to be able to talk to. And
Do these connect and amplify your radio communications?
well,
They do amplify, yes.
yeah, it's a node that's going to amplify that signal so that signal can get farther out than it normally would. So it's like a
You set up
jumping
relay.
node.
You set up a relay.
It's like a
of this.
relay. It's a relay. This kind of repeater, I can put different types of antennas on it. I can put a large directional antenna on it. I can put a antenna that I can route up to a higher point, and you can put this repeater on top of a building in downtown Nashville, and I can talk with a standard UHF radio all over town, or a standard DMR radio all over town with full 256-bit encryption.
I think we
So-
could do a whole 3 hour, probably 5 or 6 3-hour shows on the
10
comm.
hours.
So I want you guys, if you could, just kind of like Chris said earlier, the KISS principle. Let's
I
kind
would
of
like to
keep
go
it
back
simple
to what
this
Ryan was-
episode, and then go ahead.
Go back to what Ryan was talking about with tying into a satellite and sending, via an Android or some device and being able to communicate that way. I think that would be huge. And it's a lot simpler, less money to invest in. You're not needing repeaters. You're potentially operating. I mean, even with Elon Musk now is going to low altitude satellites, I think that's just going to grow. And the chance of them knocking 4,000 satellites out of the sky, but using that type of technology, I think would be a good backup plan. Maybe not your primary, but it could be a secondary or a contingency plan that you would have where you can communicate longer distances, simple bursts. You put it out there, you're done. You're not trying to talk. Does that make sense?
Yeah, to touch on something Ryan said earlier too, talking about doing satellite comms, the higher the frequency, the more directionality, the more line of sight, right? So he was talking about, I think, super high frequency stuff to the satellites. When you get into UHF, then that's coming down in the 400 megahertz. When you come down into HF, you're in the 140, 150. The lower the frequency, the longer that it will go, and the better it'll penetrate foliage and navigate terrain. But the kind of the rule of thumb is, you'd asked this earlier, Lefty, what is the range of a radio? Well, if the earth was smooth like a marble and you're using line of sight frequencies like VHF, sort of, HF very much so, especially when you get up into higher frequencies, a 6-foot man talking to another 6-foot man could be 6 miles apart. So it's 3 miles to the curvature of the earth to start to lose that signal. Now, lower frequencies will start to wrap the curvature of the earth, or like Ryan said, you'll start to do some ionosphere stuff, tropospheric ducting, whatever, to get it to go around the globe, which that starts to get into HF, lower frequencies. And it's kind of a great story how we figured HF out. Whether we have time to get into it or not, it's
Jump into it now. You brought it up. And do a Cliff Note version of it.
I'll try.
Conceal carry has just spread like crazy. Sales of handguns to women, they are probably the largest growing sector of individuals to purchase firearms.
At Mission First Tactical, we're going to develop everyday carry products that allow people to comfortably, safely discreetly carry their firearms to be responsible for their own safety. There's a vastly underserved market that's been growing, and that involves females. As you know, body shapes are different. Recently, we've developed the most comfortable, one of the safest belly bands on the market. A female body shape should not have to conform to product design for a male body shape.
Mission First Tactical is the official tactical accessories provider for the Talking Lead podcast and the Leadhead Brigade. Use the code LEADHEAD for an exclusive 20% discount on all orders.
Okay.
So there was a group of us that agreed to get into the same types of radios and same gear, and so we could have dedicated point-to-point communications. And we were using vertical antennas and 80 meters, 40 meters, 20 meters. Some people were 12 miles away, some people were 75 miles away. Couldn't do it for a year and a half. Couldn't do it. Could not talk at all. And had to do a serious deep dive and figure out that vertically oriented HF antennas are for really long range stuff and not short range. And so we, through some painful endeavors, we learned that you turn your long wire HF antennas horizontal, and then you're bouncing it off the atmosphere, and it comes back down basically in about a 400-mile radius like a parabolic dish. And where we couldn't talk to each other 12 miles apart on 100 watts, we were talking to each other that same distance away, like we were sitting next to each other on 1 watt. And it makes all the difference in the world, right? The other key element to that is a website called VOCAP, VOACAP, which is Voice of America Coverage Area Prediction. And basically you can go in there and pick your transmit point, your reception point, what kind of radio you have, what kind of antenna you have, how high it is off the ground, what your power is, and it will predict every hour of every day of every month for a year the reliability percentage as well as the signal level, and that between those 2 points and the bands, 100 160 meters, 80 meters, 40 meters, 20 meters, 10 meters, all that stuff. It'll give you these really cool colored charts that tell you these are the times to communicate between these 2 points: time of day, time of year. Winter's better than summer. Evening is better for some bands and night's better for others. So it was a learning curve, but once we figured it out, it became very predictable. And at that point, then we slid off into doing data transmissions, whether it's using a low-level signal capable program like JS8. So I can sit here at my house, and unbeknownst to my HOA, there's several long wire antennas kind of strung up around the house here, and do data transmissions all the way to to Ukraine, to Eastern Europe. So it's pretty cool. We hit things in South America. You can hit things in Europe pretty easily.
And what kind of data can you send, Howard?
JS8 is, when you listen to it, it sounds like an old fax machine, and there's different speeds of it, right? You can pick a faster speed, but when you go into faster speeds, you get into wider bandwidths. So one of the things about like VHF, UHF radios, you're in FM transmission, which is wideband, and that's because of the sonic width of the voice that you're trying to transmit, so that's an intelligible thing. There is narrowband settings on the Baofeng, and then it takes less power to get further distance, but the intelligibility starts to fall off. So with JS8, if your system is up and running, you don't even have to be there to receive a signal, a message. You can make communications groups on there, and you can send it to that group, and all the people with their call signs are in that group. You can send out a message, and when they come back to the radio, it'll be sitting there in the center of the screen, a message that's been sent to you. So you'll see incoming stuff, you'll see stuff that was dedicated to you, and then on the right you can mark sources, people with call signs that you communicate with regularly, and so you can do that. But one of the cool things is you can send out a heartbeat signal and see what your coverage is like. So you just do that. It sends out a really short heartbeat signal, and then you get all these responses back from all these other listening stations. And then to correspond with that, there's a website called PSK Reporter that will actually show you a map. You can put in your call sign, somebody else's call sign, whatever, but you can see in the last 12 to 24 hours and all the bands where they were heard around the world at any given time.
Yeah. Now, what does it take? What does it take to be able to send a picture or a video by virtue of radio?
There is a thing called slow scan TV that you can do. You're not going to be able to send. You're really not going to be able to send live video. You can send images. There's been discussion about using images as a form of, communication, somewhat coded communication, I guess you would say. But then you have to get into, we tried that, and it's like, what's the interpretation of the image? And it's never right. I mean, you'd be better off to have a brevity matrix, or even a one-time pad, type situation. One of the things to kind of keep in mind, and this is an FCC regulation, is that hiding the meaning of any message is a no-no.
Yeah. Now, Ryan, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Send imagery and possibly even some video, at least theoretically, with some of these Mesh-tastic systems. Is that right?
So the stuff that I've done with Mesh-tastic has been LoRa, and LoRa it's data only, basically quick chirps, small amounts of data, small packets. So basically, like if you go over an overpass and you see like a weather system, you see a little box with a solar panel on it. It's got a little antenna. That's usually a LoRa device, or something along the lines of parking structures. If you go to a parking structure and it tells you how many spots are available. Usually that whole parking structure has LoRa devices in it that have little photo sensors that let the system know when there's a spot available. So there's a little mesh network there. And Chris, I was thinking about that when you were talking about patrolling and you do that dog leg and you want to set up a little sensor.
Yeah.
When you take your left, you put a little LoRa radio in there with a sensor on it. That could be your little network right there for, alerting you if anyone's on your track.
So I've actually got something I need to give to Howard. When I went to Merlin in the UK, that's run by MI6 and T2 SAS, they do.
They ruined it, right?
What's that?
That's before they ruined the Merlin course.
Yeah, that's before they ruined it and tried to do it stateside like everything else. They figure we can do it fucking better, so it's stupid. But I've got all the any type of sensor where it's an IR reader. I've got all those board templates of how to build the board to create those sensors. I need to give that to Howard. So it's on a DVD so he can start making those things. Cause like any sensor, listening devices, IR, where it's basically looking at an IR beam. And if you break the beam, it sends an alarm to the receiver. All those board diagrams I've got on a DVD it was in the COTS course, commercial off the shelf course. So when you go into a country and you don't want to carry the stuff in, you can build it off technology in that country. But
hey, Marty, can you pull up what ATAC looks like on your screen?
I can. Give me a.
Come on, Jeremiah Johnson. Where did that?
Is there a website? What do we got?
Yeah, just type in ATAK.
Yeah.
And just go to imagery so you can show kind of what ATAC looks like on a phone. Because what I'm trying to get at here is you can integrate the use of a phone with these Mesh-tastic systems, and you can use the phone as the thing that's utilizing data because it becomes an internet node, right? And you can integrate that into something like Starlink, where you've got your internet being run on SATCOMs with Starlink.
Yes.
And then you're running your Mesh-tastic network off of that, and all your radios can talk to each other, but also all your phones can talk to each other in a grid-down situation where you don't have cellular service. You don't have AT&T or Sprint or Verizon. All you've got is your Mesh-tastic system talking to the Starlink, and the Starlink becomes the thing that everything's depending on. So there are ways of doing that, and things like ATAC allow you to give your other members of your team your location, GPS coordinates, certain types of data points, all that, and it's done through the phone rather than the radio.
Yeah.
Hey, Ryan.
Is this it on the screen? that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
That might be an older version. That's not it. Doesn't look like it. That
All right,
could be
let's
like
go back.
10 years ago. But I'm Brian to elaborate on that too. So yeah, with ATAC, you mentioned your team. So if you're worried about other people monitoring your communications, and you can if you get a Raspberry Pi, you can build your own server. That Raspberry Pi, you hook it up to a internet
What's
gateway,
a Raspberry Pi?
something like that, and you give everyone that in your network certs to hit that server only, and you guys have secure comms. It's 256 AES.
Yeah.
So end-to-end encryption. So,
Raspberry Pi is like a very small, like about the size of a pack of cigarettes, Android-based computer. So it's for projects like things like interfacing with ATAC and all that.
Yeah.
I use one with that Kraken SDR system that I've got, which is signal.
When you see things like homemade robots, they're using Raspberry Pis to control them, to run them.
Let's do this. I want to get into listener questions, and I think this is going to help kind of push it to where the listeners want to hear and what they want to learn. So B. Hurst, and we are giving away prizes for participation today. Seal 1, we're going to give away a complete gun care cleaning kit from Seal 1. It's going to have the pads, the brushes, and the Seal 1, several different delivery methods for that. And then for Mission First Tactical, we're probably going to give away, again, another one of their packs. So
I love my pack. I love the pack you got me.
That's right. You got a couple. When
does the Sergeant Major of the Tennessee Rangers get a pack?
Oh yeah, I got to ask Brian about that. So,
What the hell?
I've only got one. I only got one from Lefty.
Yeah.
So let's we sent a couple. We got a sling pack and we got an actual backpack. So oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Sergeant Major, take all my gear.
I'm sure we can probably get more.
Don't wait till I come pick up Bella.
So B. Hurst asks, what's the best setup? One home station and several receivers, or keep it all mobile? What's the best way to keep buried stashes dry? So two-part question there. We'll go with the comms first.
Can I add one thing real quick in there?
Absolutely.
And I think Brian can talk to the testament of this. And with Starlink now, they have a miniature satellite dish that you can take and use. I'm going to be honest. I run Starlink at my home. Brian runs Starlink on a new the high speed dish that you can run on. It's flat on top of a car. You can be running down the road 60 miles an hour and get incredible bandwidth out that thing.
I ran it in the Caribbean on a project, and it was phenomenal, and it was super fast. We ran everything from streaming Amazon movies to doing day-to-day office work on it. It was outstanding.
That's what all the tour buses have gone to for satellite as well.
Yep. And now, check out your newest update on your iPhone. If you've got an iPhone, you can now send text messages and all of that through Starlink.
Yep.
It's got a satellite function. Pull your screen down, go over to your where your Wi-Fi, where you activate your Wi-Fi, and the satellite function is right in there. You can turn that on if you've lost signal, and you can send text messages via satellite on your phone now with the new update.
Yeah.
See if I got it on Android here. But so he's asking, his question was, best setup, one home station with several receivers, or keep it mobile?
Keep it mobile.
Keep it mobile.
One reason is to keep it all in the 12-volt realm, right? So if you get a base station at home that's using power, what are we talking about here? We're talking about power going down, right? So at one of my locations, I actually have a Baofeng radio connected to a 75-watt VHF amplifier to an external antenna. And I can hit repeaters 22 miles away. It's crazy. But so yeah, keep it mobile. If I need to, I snag the Baofeng off the cradle and go. In my carry rig, I've actually got a Rangers has seen this, but I've actually got my body armor, 2 antennas, double set of Peltors with 2 microphones, 2 push to talk, and 2 Baofengs, one in each pouch. And one of those hits a 65-watt 12-volt amplifier. So you can put out 65 watts of power mobile.
Okay. And Chris answered his second part already. What's the best way to keep buried stashes dry? It's the vapor barriers, triple wrap, duct tape.
Another way to do that is with, PVC tubing, 8-inch PVC with rubber sealed caps and all that. So then you can use a post hole auger on a tractor, drill a vertical hole and stick that thing in the ground. Leave the rubber cap just under the surface. It's got a screw lock on it, screw tightening mechanism. So you can actually open it, retrieve things, seal it back, cover it back up, and you're good to go.
Mossberg used to sell that pistol grip shotgun in one of those little tubes.
Yeah, they still do.
Yeah.
And
the other thing with your cache is site selection. If you choose a site that when it rains heavy, the water pools in that area, then you might lose your cache.
Use your noggin.
Yeah, you've got to be smart about it. You've also got to be able to keep wild animals from getting into it. So hiding it correctly, reinforcing it correctly is important. You've also got the human challenge. You got to worry about folks finding your stash. So camouflage is going to be important, and just a thoughtful manner of placement is going to be your big ticket.
Inside, I actually vacuum seal, whether it's ammo, food, med supplies, whatever. I vacuum seal it additionally and throw in either silica gel packs or oxygen absorbers, whichever one you're trying to get away with. But yeah, so that way once again you're opening it, but you're not exposing everything in it. You reach in, pull out an antibiotic pack, and you open it, and you're good to go, and everything else stays intact. So
yeah,
especially for electronics, you're going to want to put the silica gel packs in vacuum sealed.
What about storing batteries in situations like that? How do you recommend storing batteries?
You can take batteries and put them in a Ziploc bag with some rice. Believe it or not, it keeps them pretty. You can just throw some rice in there. Just like if your cell phone gets wet, you put it in a bag of rice. Works the same.
What about vacuum sealing batteries? Is that good or bad?
What
type of batteries?
Vacuum sealing the batteries. Is that good or bad?
It's fine. Okay. As long as the difference is, as long as you put a silica gel pack in there to take any moisture out of the environment. Because if you go into different temperatures, whatever, it'll sweat.
Yeah.
It can't sweat.
And also
you're trapping humidity inside, right?
For the mobile comms, you can fit out Pelican cases. They actually have them pre-built. You can order them to spec for your Starlink, for any type of, for your amps, all that stuff. So with a simple Google, you can find people that make these things.
Yeah.
They might run a few $100s, but it's pretty good for mobile comms.
Yeah, we built one for our Starlink, and it's makes it very portable, very deployable.
Boba1776, he says, I am a ham KJ4RMZ and looking at Meshtastic. Can your guest give any firsthand knowledge? Also, get a road atlas or maps for your area. If possible, have 3 routes to and from any given location. Giving his own personal tips.
So with Meshtastic, I would just say it's the easy button if you do it the correct way. If you go to Meshtastic right now, I think if you scroll down, there's their first node, as they call it, and I think it's around $100. If you buy that thing is Bluetooth enabled. You Bluetooth it to your phone once you connect them, and then you are going to be. Then you just you got to configure it. Obviously, get all the freaks lined up so they're all talking. But whatever node you put in your area within line of sight, that'll create your local mesh network. Once you create that local mesh network, if you want to reach the internet, you're going to have a different type of node. It's called the LoRa WAN, Wide Area Network, LoRa Wide Area Network. With that node, that's going to be connected to your Starlink or your house internet or your mobile kit for Starlink, and that'll be your access to the internet. And I believe that it's called the WizBot or WizBlock. That has GPS information that sends GPS, and it's also just going to send data. So on the Meshtastic app, you can create group chats. You can go peer-to-peer chat. So I guess especially for younger folks, since it's an app, people are going to know how to use it. They're going to relate to it easier. So, but since this guy's a ham user, I don't know. he might have been doing that for a while. I don't know if he's going to like the apps or not. But usually those ham guys are old crusty fucks that don't like to be changed.
Yeah, with 50-foot antennas talking.
I left my pocket protector on the counter this morning. Hey, Ryan, speak to with Meshtastic and ATAC. Speak to some of the potential vulnerabilities for being discovered based on the GPS elements of that. I mean, it's transmitting GPS coordinates of all the users, correct?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, anyone listening can get that information. You can't stop that with GPS. It's going up to the satellite, so they have access to it basically. Do you have anything to add about that? I mean, other than so the certificate. So if you are not using your 256 AES certificates that you can build, you have to know Linux. You have to be able to build the server and create your own certs. Funny thing is, if you really want to learn a lot about ATAC, if you I think Reddit has a forum, and it's all the paintballers. Those guys build their own servers. They use it for their paintball, and they know their shit. And there's two types of ATAC. There's a military ATAC, and then there's a civilian ATAC, and they're all over that civilian ATAC stuff. They know their stuff, so you can learn a lot from those guys.
Yeah.
Log on to the paintball forums, and you might learn some comm stuff.
Hey man, I did a scout course over in North Carolina, and you know who was who did the best at embracing that was this young kid who was a paintballer. He was an airsoft paintball kid, and this is former military, all that stuff, and he rocked it because that's what they do. Yeah. They've got the radios, they're doing Meshtastic, they've got night vision, they've got all that stuff. So.
Next question is John Adams III. He says, for communication, a GMRS license is a great way to get started. Main thing with comms is you have to practice it in advance. We talked about that. Don't just expect to pull your radio out of the box and be efficient with when the shit hits the fan. So,
what was the question?
He's just making a comment.
Let's talk about let's talk about GMRS for a second.
Okay.
So GMRS is if I remember right, it's like General Mobile Radio Service, whatever. I think it's 22 frequencies pre-programmed. I think you can set privacy tones, which are and one thing to remember when you're using tone-coded squelch or continuous tone-coded squelch or privacy tones, whatever they're calling them, all that does is keeps you from hearing other people. It doesn't keep other people from hearing you on that radio. If you're broadcasting, people are hearing it. It's just a way to filter out the incoming traffic to your radio so that only somebody with that tone can hear it. I'm going to be pretty frank with you. GMRS sucks. Because it's extremely limited on frequencies, right? You got a handful of frequencies. You almost have to see each other for it to work. And it won't work 200 yards out in the woods. I mean, it's not good. In one of the vehicles that we have set up for Rangers, we have a GMRS repeater in there. So you can talk to the truck. The truck will then there are GMRS repeater frequencies. And once again, to touch on a repeater, you have an incoming frequency. It takes that message, amplifies it, and rebroadcasts it, right? You're still not going to get a half mile out of it.
And what that does, then the reason we have that is because when we deploy to a catastrophe and you've got, every church and every community group is out trying to clean up and do assistance, they're talking on GMRS or FRS radios. And we can pull up in that area with our command truck and we can hear what's going on there. We can actually communicate with them if need be. We can reach out to those weaker, more civilian-based radios. So that gives us some capability to actually reach out into the community and talk and to listen.
Yeah. So your 22 frequencies in GMRS are capped at 2 watts, right? You can't go above 2 watts. FRS, which is Family Radio Service, if I remember correctly, it's capped at a 0.5 watt. So these are great when you're out with you're out camping with your family or whatever, and you're
Hiking.
not a mile away from each other. But beyond that, they're
Howard, just to be devil's advocate here. So a couple points from GRMS. One of my coworkers swears by it. I've dabbled a little bit, but compared to ham, there's no course you have to take. It's $30. Takes you 5 minutes to.
And I think that's his point. He said that's a great way to get started, is what he said.
Yeah, so you do that, and
yeah.
if you are able to hit the repeaters, he's seen up to 20 miles. But I'm not sure how ham works. The repeater won't talk to repeater. So you're just gonna hit that repeater, and it's just gonna go. It's just a higher elevation, so it's gonna get a bigger comms bubble, but you're not talking to repeaters.
Yeah.
So
I asked him how he practices. He says, I try to talk to friends and make new contacts on repeaters. It takes time to learn how to program the repeaters into your radios. You also need to try your radios in different locations to learn of any terrain limitations and see which repeaters you can reach. So continue on there with that.
That makes sense.
Yeah. It is this very simple way to get into it and start to use radio. But
we'll use it.
It's not face programmable. It's preset frequency.
What's the consensus on applicability in regarding to a shit hit the fan environment? That's where I'm, my mind's at.
Sure.
Well, so I just met with some EMS guys down in Georgia, on my way back from that class in South Carolina, and they actually are to get back to GMRS and FRS, they're actually kind of telling folks in the community to have one available, because it is something they monitor, and you can call for help if you need to. The range is going to be crazy limited. I'm getting a friend of mine down in North Georgia set up, and he and a friend are trying to talk basically across the street with GMRS, and they can't do it house to house. I mean, it just, radio to radio. Now, if you hit a repeater, now you've got elevation, you got power, you've got all those things that come into play, right? So.
Yeah. And Mustang Perry asked, and this is kind of going along with this conversation, he wants to know the difference between ham and GMRS. Are there benefits to one over the other, which is better for emergencies?
Well, to be fair, this ham radio will talk to a GMRS radio. I can face tune to the frequency that FRS and GMRS are talking on, and I can talk to them. It's not FCC legal, but you can do that. It will compat.
Yeah, Baofeng had to back up with the UV5Rs and make them GMRS because of the face programmability and all that. But there's a hack where you open all that back up.
And I believe TID radio still sells them without the block on that. That's what these are, and they talk to all of my GMRS. I can just tune them right to it, and it talks to them perfectly.
So the difference with ham is versus like to use GMRS, I don't just handheld GMRS. I don't think you have to have a license. Now I may be wrong. For us to utilize a GMRS repeater at 50 watts, then we had to do a sub license off of a ham license to do that, but it's free at that point.
Yeah, GMRS has that small little license certificate that comes in the box of most of the radios. You can go online and fill it out. It's like $35, and you get your little GMRS license. The fact is, it's more for people that are going to be talking to repeaters rather than somebody that's going to talk to their family member or from Jeep to Jeep, on a trail, because those radios aren't going to talk or don't have enough power to get out to disturb anybody. They're very much an area radio.
It's short range,
Very short range. There's something that's being slept on here, and it's the DMR radio. The DMR radio is a really cool setup, and we've been using them for the last 2 years now, and they work extremely well. They get a ton of range. They're very versatile, and you can run 256-bit encryption on it. You can get these set up as a commercial radio, which is not much different than doing a GMRS license. You've got to apply. I would recommend my friend Jake at Rangeland Communications can set you up with any number of very expensive DMR radios down to the lower price models, repeaters, etc. He can set up your encryption, and he can walk you through the licensing process. Rangeland Communications has been great for the Tennessee Rangers, helped us a ton, and the DMR works really well. We use them as security radios. We use them in emergencies. This is the High Terra 782, and this thing's waterproof. It runs really well, and you can attach all your Peltors, all that kind of thing to it. Your PTTs, all that stuff connect to these, and they work great.
So to
And
answer
it
the
also
question
runs
on
on
the
analog.
license, GMSR radios require a license issued by the FCC. This applies to all users who transmit GMSR frequencies. The FCC requires licensing because the GMRS radios can transmit at higher power levels up to 50 watts, which
Repeaters.
could interfere with other stuff. It's like $35. It lasts 10 years. It covers your entire immediate family. No exam. I think it's like you fill out there with you when you get it. There's an application or something in with the device, and you just fill that out.
So, Lefty, so the way I saw the reason you're going to get an account or a license is you get a certain radio, and there's an app for that radio. When you're registering that for that app,
Email address.
Well, yeah, but it's also going to ask for your license number, so you can actually use the app. That's probably otherwise you're probably not going to, don't break the law, but you're probably not going to run any issues.
I read something where it says that the FCC doesn't really monitor those much anyway. So
Not a Rubicon, man. Listen to his stuff.
Yeah, exactly. The amount of prosecutions that have ever been brought on these things is very, very few. It's usually people that are doing harassment of something like a repeater that get busted by the FCC. It's folks that have pirate radio stations that are loud, big wattage that are walking on other people and causing interference for other communication systems.
So a quick question for Brian and Ryan, because you guys are probably more familiar with DMR than I am. It's encrypted. Can you change the encryption key while it's operating? In other words, if you lose a radio, can you push a new encryption key to everybody that's on your network?
Well, you would have to reprogram it you would have to reprogram radios with a system like Chirp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where it gets the encryption key from, through Chirp.
Yeah, as far as I know, now I'm not the expert on programming them, but as far as I know, the encryption key is cultivated by virtue of the Chirp function, of the programming function.
Okay.
Here is a question from. You got more?
No, that's it.
Okay. J Black, P2P, caches. When creating caches, what is the best way to not only store your cache, which I think we've talked about, but also mark your hiding spot? I don't think we really talked about marking your spot so others can't disperse.
So, I mean, if you're setting them up around where you live, your home location, pick out a significant terrain feature. I talk about using something that most people, even the hunters out there, typically stay away from power lines. So power lines, those high-speed power lines or state access is great areas to do it. But you can mark it with a GPS device, get the grade coordinate to it or geocord to it, like they do.
You could also just have a known location and run a heading on it. If you know that it's at 80 degrees north, then when you start from this tree or from your front porch, then you can nail down exactly where that is. You can have just a list of your headings.
Also, Chris, you'll probably relate to this. While patrolling and doing ambushes, we would use our left and right limits. You remember the red cockaded woodpecker? That's that fucker up in Bragg.
Yeah.
There's signs all over the place. There's signs everywhere. We would just pull a sign, put it on another tree. That's our right limit. Grab another sign, put it on another tree. That's our left limit. So if you see signs that are normal in the area, just move one to where you put your shit. Most likely, no one's going to touch it. That'll be your mark right there. So.
Yep.
Very good. And he also goes on to say, I also would like to. Oh, wait. If using a repeater, is there a general rule with placement, especially if you don't own the land you need to use for a repeater?
Well, I mean, if I find a device on my property that I didn't put there, I'm going to confiscate it, monitor it, or crush it.
Yeah.
So go back to what we talked about earlier with scanning and knowing the active frequencies of your area of operation, and then all of a sudden something like a repeater pops up. You're gonna direction find that thing and track it down, confiscate it.
Yeah.
So be very careful about putting stuff or just temporarily deploy them. I mean, you could there's actually a repeater cable that you could put between two bafangs and turn them into a repeater. We put them in an ammo box and you can drop it on a hilltop, and now you can talk from down in the valley to the top of the hill, and then it repeats the signal on a different frequency, much further that way.
Yeah,
And in a shit hit the fan scenario, you got to worry about booby traps around that cache.
Got to worry about power too. So obviously, if you're going to be near a building, you might, if you're powering it with batteries, it's going to die. If you're using solar panels, get a good spot where the sun's going to hit it and it's going to be charging. So.
Yeah. A crazy thing about the bafangs, I've actually left them on in the pouch of my rig 2 months. The thing's still sitting there on. As long as it's not transmitting, it'll last. It'll sit there on for a long time.
Rayo Shields, he says, for some good ideas on prepper caches, look up the book Survival Theory by Jonathan Hollerman. Good advice, especially considering how much calorie-wise is needed to put back. Also, ideas for retreat locations and storage near them. Might want to check out NC Scouts, the Guerrilla's Guide to the Baofeng radio.
Yep. That's the course that Howard went to.
One of them, yeah.
Baofeng?
What course haven't you been to, Howard?
I'm a nerd, man. I've got a thirst for knowledge, right? But yeah, NC Scott's got a book that you can get that's the I forget what the name of it is, but something about the guerrilla applications of the Baofeng radio.
Yes, the Guerrilla Guide to the Baofeng radio.
Hey, on that note, Ryan, Howard will take vets with him on things. You just got to ask him, man. Although he's never asked me, but he does do this. He will take somebody and pay in full for them to, go with him. So
where we go? Which course we going to?
Hey, pick one. Let's go, man. Hey, Brian could tell every time I get ready to do something. I'm like, hey, do you care if I post this? And he's like, no, put it out. Nobody ever goes. So,
well, you go to some expensive shit, man. Not all
exactly.
of us. Not all of us have the budgetary
funds
to go and do that.
When you're single, you could do that, man.
And I wanted to go, but I've only got one eyeball. I mean, what am I supposed to do with my PVS 14? I'm stumbling around in there.
I'd say
his handicap trump card.
A third of the people in the course had single tubes. So.
Well, I can do it. I have one. I need to go next time.
One of the other things you'll learn in NC Scouts course is how to make field expedient antennas out of about anything, right? And that is huge. All you got to do is carry a couple of pieces, with you, or fence insulators or whatever. And man, you can make jungle antennas. We've built them. We've even got pretty slick about building them out of silicone wire, so they're like super flexible. You just take it, wad it up, stick it in your pocket. But we've range tested those on the back of a vehicle at 9 miles.
Wow.
That's pretty, yeah. That's pretty happening. So.
Draco 0427. Next to the obvious, like food, ammo, firearms, clothing, communication, what type of medical supplies should we be prepping for? Chris had mentioned some things there earlier. When the shit hits the fan, one would think medical supplies would be at the front of the cache prepping, especially when a lot of medicine has expiration dates. Natural solutions might be more beneficial, like herbs and supplements.
Well, here's one that you can use. So you can take multiple Ziploc bags and just put sugar in them. During the Civil War, sugar was used after they chopped somebody's leg off, and they would pack that with sugar because sugar is a form of antibiotic. So sugar, honey, pine sap, anything like that you can get out there in the wild for a wound works.
Yeah.
And sugar.
And there are some great books out there too that
not an antibiotic, antiseptic. It's antiseptic. Yeah.
Great natural things that you can use out.
Well, here's one too. Weeping willow. The Indians used to use weeping willow. They would take the bark from weeping willow, and it's aspirin. That's what they make aspirin out of.
Yeah, that's old mountain man. Yeah, Mama would give you a willow branch to chew on if you had a headache.
Yeah. Weeping willow. You just take the bark, boil it, and then that's a form of aspirin or painkiller.
I tell my granddad I had a headache, and he would pop me on the head. Say, does it still hurt?
So a lot of that's in this book too. How to make natural painkillers. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of great literature out there. I mean, you just got to do a search on it. And again, like we said earlier, do it now. Don't wait. Be proactive. Don't be reactive. So.
And I didn't think about this when I was doing some of my stuff, but I'm fortunate to have some tier 1 buddies, and they highly recommended, if you're going to put some stuff away, use the combination of acetaminophen and ibuprofen tablets. So then you're getting the pain killing and the anti-inflammatory stuff at the same time. So it's a great combo.
Ranger candy,
fever reduction, all that.
Brandon Ballistics. I have hidden caches of MREs and basic survival supplies in plastic containers, supposedly meant for use as caches, throughout my property and my family's property, roughly 25 acres, that are near places like natural caves that contain coal, overlooks, a water source, etc. I have no firearms or ammo in any of them yet. I know that's something I should do, but I haven't done so. Most likely food and common survival equipment, water filters, air filters, gas masks, knives, fire starters, etc. If we enter a situation where we have to shoot raiders, I'd probably die from trusting the wrong person before I ran out of ammo anyway. I mean, that goes back to building your community, Know who you can trust and who you can't.
I do want to touch on one point of that. And these people that store thousands and thousands of rounds at their home, I feel like that's Howard looked back at the camera because he's probably got 1 million rounds at his house. But
that's just upstairs.
That does not really hold up too well in the theory of being mobile. You're not going to pack your truck up with 3,000 rounds of ammo. You really should concentrate on maybe moving some of the ammo to cache sites where you can go mobile too. Obviously, if it's in a civil unrest scenario and there's going to be conflict, there's battlefield recovery, folks. You have, obviously, if you're successful, retrieve some ammo, in that engagement. So you don't need to sit there and store 5,000 rounds of ammo at your home.
That's a whole other scenario. Is if if you're building a compound, that's a whole other different situation scenario.
Yeah, they're probably going to get raided.
Well, I mean, it depends on how you fortify. It's all
or droned or otherwise.
Yeah,
but that's also why, going back to something Chris said early on, stay in the 3 primary calibers: 5.56, 7.62, by 39, and 9mm. That's mostly what or 22.
I say 22 also. I think 22.
That's what you're going to run into the most out there if you actually run across something to salvage.
Yeah. Plus, you can carry a lot more 22 ammo if you're on the go.
Hey, Lefty, if we have a hard stop time, how much longer do you think this is going to go?
No, we're wrapping it up right now. We just got through the listener questions, so let's award some prizes here to our listeners, and then we'll do final thoughts, and we'll bug out.
Cool.
Because it's Friday. By God.
What he said.
Brian's got.
I've got to go put the boats in.
You got the boats running?
We got to go put the boats in the water for in-dock.
So based on those questions, we've got the SEAL one, we've got the Mission First Tactical that we are going to give away. Vote. What do you think was the best comment question and the best 2. That's who we'll award our prizes to. You remember our questions we had there?
Yeah, probably the one speaking about GMRS, I guess.
That's what I was thinking.
Been a couple.
Yeah.
Been a couple on that.
versus ham.
The what?
Difference
GMRS
between ham radio and
I would like to know the difference between ham and GMRS. That is Mustang Perry. So Mustang, get in touch with me, talkinglet@gmail.com, and let me know that you were selected to win one of these prizes. And let's give Mustang the backpack. Let's give him the backpack so he can put his radio stuff in there. So email me, tell me what you won. Gonna need your address. And then for the Seal 1, complete gun cleaning care kit.
probably the one that whether mobile or home station. That was a good question.
Let's see who that was. I think that was the very first one, wasn't it? B. Hurst. So B. Hurst. Talkinglet@gmail.com. You won the Seal 1 and done. And both of those use the code LEADHEAD, and you're going to get discounts. So if you want to go, you want to buy the products, get a nice discount. Mission First has all your AR accessories, your bags, your magazines. Also hook Brian up with some magazines, which you guys are already running.
Yeah.
But you can get cool things printed on your Mission First magazine. So go check them out. Holsters. You got some of their holsters too. You've been running that belly band yet?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we have, and they're great. Love the outside the waistband Glock holster.
Yeah,
the Secret Service holster.
Designed for the Secret Service. Yeah.
Yep, it's great.
Great holsters. So go check them out. Use the discount codes. And final thoughts, guys. Let's wrap it up. Let's start with caches. Final thoughts on caches.
Yeah, hide them good.
So caches, you should have caches around your home location somewhere, and wherever your endpoint is that you know in your plan of where you're gonna go to, if something does happen, and then obviously some intermediate caches along the way, along your corridor, your E&E route.
Good. Any other guys got anything on caches? Ryan, Howard? Because you're a comm guy, so let's get some final thoughts on comms. And I would probably like to get you guys back on and do more in depth on maybe these certain types of systems. So
yeah, I mean the comm side's a black hole. I mean you can go deep.
Yeah,
it is a black hole.
One thing I'd like to say is whether you're doing mesh-tastic products like that or Baofangs, it doesn't matter if it's an EMP scenario, coronal mass ejection, whatever. It's all gone. So you need Faraday bags, to store this stuff in. You don't have to store everything in it, but at least keep a set stored. When I was down in Georgia talking to these EMS guys, I'm like, they got a whole rack full of radios. I said, you need to pull at least one of those out and put them in a Faraday bag. And they're like, well, if it gets to that, we'll just call it quits. I'm like, what? So you can get those on Amazon. Mission Darkness makes great ones. I'm not advertising for anybody, but
do Faraday bags and cages protect against EMPs?
Yes.
And there's also
you can also get Faraday dry bags. Our scout swimmer team was just donated a whole batch of Faraday dry bags. They roll over just like a standard dry bag. They actually have our scout swimmer logo on the front of them, but they also limit any kind of electronic intrusion.
Yeah.
And I would just go back to preparation. Practice the basics, teach the basics, and what Chris went to is just keep it simple, stupid. Like we're talking mesh-tastic here. That's kind of, you get in the weeds with that stuff. But if you really want it, comms is difficult. If you want to push the easy button, just let's do some handheld radios that's line of sight that you can communicate with your community. And then once you get that going, then start building from there.
One
Yeah.
good website people could go to for the basics. You guys know, got anything that you could suggest, or book?
Google.
Yeah, go ahead, Ron. Sorry.
No, I mean, I don't have I just,
There's not a go-to that you recommend?
I don't have a go-to. If you can get into a tornado of comms, you can learn so much, and you can be doing that stuff for 8 hours. Just start Googling stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, North Carolina. What's his name? Howard
NC Scout. Yeah, that
NC Scout. He's a great place to start. He's got a great website.
Yeah.
You can get his book. I believe his book is also online where you can just download it.
It's on Amazon as well. But
Yeah, and that'll get you started on how to run a Baofeng, how to run a basic ham radio, and just learn the basics of antenna theory, programming, etiquette, etc. Just how to basically run it, and then you can start stepping into other radios. And with that, you're going to build your capability because different radios are used for different things. Some things work where others won't, and that's once you have all that stuff in place, you can more effectively approach the threat at hand.
Very good. And maybe one day Sergeant Major will write a book.
Indeed.
No. Hell no. Nope. I'm not a SEAL, and I'm not one of those glory boys.
Very good.
The cover would be a cat with a green beret.
That's coming.
Yeah.
I like that. So, guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate everybody taking the time. It was great. I mean, so much information here. Hopefully, our lead heads will know how to unpack this. But if you've got questions, comments, email me talkinglead@gmail.com. If there's something that you want us to go deeper in on future episodes, email me talkinglead@gmail.com. But until then, lead heads, as always, keep your loved ones close. Come on, Brian, you know it.
Oh, I'm sorry. And I forget what it is. I forget. It slipped my mind.
And for this episode, we'll say, and keep your comms closer. How
And
about that?
keep your comms closer. Yeah.
And dialed in. Very
sorry.
Good. Did we?
She said she gave me an RW.